I haven't met anybody yet who likes being just told what to do. Nobody likes my way or the highway. And that's where leadership comes in. If I'm giving you a task or direct you to do something because it benefits me, and then if there's a small byproduct for you, okay, well, that's just incidental. Then that's not really leadership. And I would argue that's not even direct. That's just being selfish.
Do you feel like you've had to adjust your style of communication around the people that you work with?
All the time. Not two people are motivated the same way.
I think Toastmasters is wonderful because it offers the advantage of group mentoring. So that teamwork dynamic is a huge advantage.
I would say this is the place where we can make mistakes and we even applaud them. How do you inspire and lead your team to achieve their individual leadership and communication goals?
Toast and Tea, where we have all the tea, tips, and stories, here to inspire you. Hosted by Little Norway's Toastmasters. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Toast and Tea podcast. My name is Shantia. I'm going to be your host for today's podcast. So today we have with us Manny Martinez, who hails from Olympia, Washington. He's the president of Relentless Leadership, LLC, a Crestcom International authorized agent. Crestcom delivers interactive learning experiences in leadership and management, which help people produce real business results across 60 countries and 25,000 clients. In October 2018, Manny completed a 30-year career in the United States Air Force, reaching the summit of leadership as a Chief Master Sergeant. He served military tours in the US, Germany, Italy, and Turkey, and deployed to military operations in Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, I hope I said that right, and Afghanistan. Dawn Talkers Toastmasters meets on Tuesdays at 6:30 a.m., so hopefully you are an early bird. It is a hybrid club that meets both online and in person. So I'm going to go ahead and link down below the Toastmasters website for Dawn Talkers, Manny's LinkedIn, and the website crestcom.com, for which he is the president of. All right. Let us go ahead and get started. Manny, welcome to the Toast and Tea podcast. So we want to know, why did you join Toastmasters? What brought you there?
Cynthia, delighted to be here with you. When I was in the military, it was 2007, and I noticed that if I wanted to improve my ability to communicate with people, I needed to do something different. I was never shy of the stage. I could get in front of a crowd and talk to people, but when I would talk to, say, my unit commander or a senior leader, in my mind, I'd be thinking, Manny, they're going to ask you questions and you got to be ready. And I better get all my material, all my information in my head, all straightened out. And I'd walk in, I'd sound all smart, and suddenly they'd ask me something that was a curveball. And I would panic. I'd start stuttering. I start tripping over myself. And I would leave the office just feeling completely depressed, saying, let me find out. I'll get back to you. As I'm walking out the commander's office, what couldn't you talk, Manny? You know the answer to this. What happened? Why did you lock up? I knew I needed to do something different. There was a local Toastmasters club that was meeting. I was working at Hickam Air Force Base at the time at the PACAF building, the Pacific Air Forces building. This is the building historically that was a dormitory that was bombarded during Pearl Harbor. All the bullet holes are still there. What's interesting is a few years before, I had talked to someone who was a Toastmaster. This guy was giving a keynote speech at a promotion ceremony, and every time he talked into the microphone, he would smack his lips. So he would say a line and would say something else, and he would say another line, and I knew he really worked on his presentation skills. So afterwards, I said, hey, can I give you some feedback? And he said, yeah. I said, did you notice that whenever you spoke, when you paused, you would start again by smacking your lips? And then I don't remember what you talked about. I just counted how many times you smacked your lips when you were giving your keynote. And instead of him saying, thank you, I never noticed that, he started telling me about how he was a Toastmaster, how he won all these different speech contests. And I thought, Toastmasters are a bunch of snobs. Fast forward a few years later, I remember that conversation and I found the club. I walked into the club. I found out they were not a bunch of snobs. They were actually pretty cool people. And I was able to work on improving my communication skills. Table topics, especially help in the beginning, preparing speeches, giving persuasive conversations, the Q&A type speeches. And then I was able to better present ideas and concepts to my senior leaders. And often I was more successful and was not leaving those offices with the tail between my legs anymore. That's why I joined.
Well, that sounds like a success story there, Martinez. So what was it? Sorry, Manny. I went straight to your last name. What was it? Um, how long have you been in Toastmasters up until this point now?
Since November of 2007, I've been a Toastmaster. I
2007.
had a little break in
Wow.
between,
Mhm.
but pretty much since 2007. I was in a club in Hawaii, a couple of clubs in Florida. When the military brought me here to Olympia, I joined Dawn Talkers, Toastmasters, and I would go to my club meeting on Tuesday morning at 6:30 a.m. Being a military guy, pretty easy. Already waking up early. And then after the meeting was over, I drive and go to work. Now it's a hybrid club. I joined from home. I'm no longer in the military, but I've stuck with it because it's really helpful. I can tell when I don't go to Toastmasters meetings, I start to have all those verbalized pauses like the ums and the ohs and so's and you knows. They just creep up on you.
They
And
do.
next thing you know, whoa, where did all that come from? I also tend to speak a little bit faster, especially when I get nervous. And Toastmasters really helps me slow down my delivery, give the pauses that you need, be able to articulate and enunciate clearly, which when you're nervous, that can happen. And like, what did you say? Oh, this person's not, you know how it goes. If you can't speak coherently, then perhaps you're not versed in whatever it is that you're trying to talk about. Maybe you're not prepared to get that conversation. People start to lose trust in you, which is a sad state of affairs when you think about it. The reality is, better leaders are better communicators, and Toastmasters does a really good job of being able to better develop that communication skill.
Yes, I agree. I was just at a meeting last night and someone told me, slow down. We need those reminders just so we understand that when we're communicating to an audience, not everyone is perceiving it the same way that we perceive our communication. We need that feedback. It's absolutely necessary. Now, when it comes to leadership, do you feel like you've taken advantage of the leadership roles in Toastmasters? Do you feel like that has helped prepare you in some way?
It has. Here's some of the ways. You may not be in a position of you are at the top of the leadership structure in an organization, and Toastmasters allows you to do that. You're club president or the vice president of education, your top two positions. It gives you an opportunity to think about what's the mission of our club? What's the vision? What does Toastmaster want to do? How do you inspire and lead your team to achieve their individual leadership and communication goals? And they may all be different from one person to the next. Some people just want to not be afraid to get in front of a crowd anymore. And some people want to be the next international world champion of Toastmasters. All different walks of life. And there you are, you're the club president. You get an opportunity to practice listening, influencing people, inspiring them, keeping them focused on the vision, what the club wants to accomplish, what people want to accomplish. That was really helpful as I got into my senior ranks in the Air Force. So I wasn't there yet when I joined in 2007. And then, okay, how do I give feedback in a way that I do so in a dignified and respectful manner for someone else? And then how can I take that and turn that around in my day-to-day work? Nobody likes to just be told in very crude and critical ways the areas that they could sharpen up. Well, Toastmasters gives you that opportunity to develop that skill. And what's really cool, I used to say this when I was the president at my Toastmasters club at Hurlburt Field. I would say, this is the place where we can make mistakes and we even applaud them. At a Toastmasters club, you can screw up all you want. It's fine, because we're going to give you good feedback to help you sharpen those areas. And in that space, great. When you go on the outside, then you would have had the opportunity to practice here, which I think it's remarkable. And I really like the whole concept of everybody's there to help each other. There's all the clubs that I've been involved with, everybody's been very mutually supportive, because we all know we're in that same boat. We all want to improve our skills when it comes to communication, when it comes to leadership. But I would argue it's beyond that. It's really, how do we help ourselves professionally and personally? There are many qualities in Crestcom that we learn that we can apply into our day-to-day lives. And certainly listening is probably the one that we don't talk about most in clubs, but the one that we're developing considerably. It's a 5 to 7 minute speech. Excuse me, I'm speeding up. It's a 5 to 7 minute speech. Your job right now is to be quiet.
Yes, I agree that Toastmasters absolutely helps you to build that self-awareness because, again, they're catching all of those speak patterns, our grammar, we're evaluating the speeches, we're evaluating all of these different parts of how are you engaging people? Is your message being communicated clearly? And I feel like that's not something you would be aware of unless you are trained to listen to that, develop that trained ear to catch those little pieces where you can connect with people. The other week, my sister, actually, who's a part of our Toastmasters club, talked about her direct style communication, which I imagine is very common in the military. Direct style communication. And
Tell me,
one of
how does she explain it?
direct style, which is where you're, instead of being indecisive or getting around the topic, getting straight to the point of what it is that people are needing to do, making sure to assign them tasks. So there's no confusion, or if you're communicating to your superiors and letting them know that you're going to get a task done, to just make sure they know exactly when and how it's going to get done. My feedback for her for that speech was, I would love to hear more of the reviews of how people respond to your direct style communication, because maybe, depending on the personality in the work environment, maybe we have to adjust to people. Do you feel like you've had to adjust your style of communication around the people that you work with?
All the time. Not two people are motivated the same way. I'll tell you, I read a book from Mike Krzyzewski, the coach from the Duke University basketball team, legendary coach.
Hmm.
And in this book, he writes about he never coached two players the same way. You may have two people who are playing the same position, and yet he never coached everybody the same. Why? Because everybody brings different strengths to the table. He needed to get to know them and then adapt his style, his leadership style, to bring out the best in them. In the military, very often, yes, there are things that we need to get done. We have checklists, we have orders. That's why they call it orders. So we actually do them instead of options. There are steps that we need to follow. And that's in any other different types of businesses. These are the steps that we need to follow to make sure that we accomplish this goal or this project, or get this task done, provide this service. Yes, absolutely. There are moments where we have to be very clear and specific as to these are steps we need to follow. That said, I haven't met anybody yet who likes being just told what to do. Nobody likes my way or the highway. And that's where leadership comes in. How do I then tell you to do something for me, but present it in a way where now you see there's value for you as well to accomplish it, and that you are committed to that because you see the benefit to you, not just the benefit to me. And I think that's where adaptive leadership is most important. If we think about that positive intent, if I give you a task to do, Shantia, it's because I know that this is going to benefit you, benefit a client benefit the team? Who did I not mention in that conversation? Me. If I'm giving you a task or direct you to do something because it benefits me, and then if there's a small byproduct for you, okay, well, that's just incidental. Then that's not really leadership. And I would argue that's not even direct. That's just being selfish. But yes, there are moments in the military where we have to think about, okay, we have a certain task to do, and it has to be accomplished the same way. We have to train the way we fight. We have to prepare for that. And that's really important. However, the best military leaders, and I would argue this, the best leaders in any place or type of industry, they're constantly developing the people who are working for them or with them. For example, a staff sergeant moves up to become a tech sergeant. A tech sergeant in the Air Force moves up to be a master sergeant. Well, if I have a staff sergeant, I meet with that person and I say, my job right now is to help you become a tech sergeant, give you the tools to be better. So when you step into my role, you can do a better job than I did. So that's a type of leadership that is really impactful, because now we're empowering other people. We're helping them to develop those skills.
And here you are running a business that revolves around leadership. I think Toastmasters is wonderful because it offers the advantage of group mentoring. So we're all, even if we're not assigned an officer role, we're all are taking in roles where we get to group mentor each other. And even after the meeting is over, we get to give our feedback to people, perhaps. So that teamwork dynamic is a huge advantage in Toastmasters. And it seems like that's where you putting the emphasis on that teamwork has helped you to succeed in your career.
Well, it's the team that makes things happen. You're in the Toastmasters club and maybe you are all in. The rest of the team, if they're not committed, then the club experience is going to suffer. The same thing when you go to work, the same thing when you are, working in your department. We all have to be committed, and we all have to have very clear, defined expectations. This is what we're trying to accomplish. Here's where we're going. This is why we're doing these things. Here's your role. Here's what you're valued. So absolutely, when you are sitting in a club meeting, that speech evaluator may not be a club officer, and yet might deliver the most important aspect of that meeting, providing great quality feedback on a speech. Maybe you're learning your Toastmasters journey, you're in the first couple of months or so, and you step up to be a timer. How important it is, the timer role, to keep people on time so people can frame their thoughts and ideas concisely and clearly and coherently in a specified time slot, and providing that information. The Auger-Mary encounter, so important to help us refine how we communicate. Then you find yourself watching television or a movie or somebody giving a speech, and you notice all those little filler words and verbalized pauses. Helps you to think, well, we don't need to say those things. We can just say them.
Do you feel like you have a favorite role, or there was a role maybe that taught you the most about, I don't know, yourself or your communication style or learning how to talk to people?
I like the General Evaluator. The Toastmaster of the day is really important. It's the MC, the person that's really running and steering the show, keeping the entire flow. It can be really busy. The General Evaluator is the person that gets to sit back and really watch everything, and then provide that, here's what went well, here's what could have gone better, and here are some things that we can challenge ourselves for the next go around. It's a great assessment for us to really focus on, these are the things that are really clicking. Here's what I noticed that somebody did really well, and that recognition that maybe that Toastmaster they might have missed. Here's an
Yes.
area where I've seen in the past we've done really well, and maybe we just need to focus our attention on this for the future. It's that role that brings it all together in a way that you get the big picture. Toastmaster days really focus on the tactical aspects, and then the general evaluator is really thinking the big strategy, the big components, and how they all come together during the meeting.
You're making the general evaluator sound like a mastermind of some, like we have this mastermind master planner of running this ship and taking it somewhere. So I love hearing that perspective, because it just goes to show you why these roles that we were assigned have survived for some time, why it's been part of the Toastmasters experience for who knows how long. Toastmasters has been existing for 100 years, but the general evaluator has a very valuable role, as do all of the other different roles in our Toastmasters experience, the meeting.
There are certain ground rules and understandings and traditions that our meetings have. And the general evaluator's purpose, one of the main ideas of being a general evaluator, is to make sure that we are adhering to those practices. So when you go to one club to the next, there might be some little things that look different, some unique aspects that make that club the club that it is, and that's great. And yet there is a framework and a construct that makes that meeting standard across countries and across languages and across any type of situation, which is really cool. And the general evaluator is able to, take a look at all that and be able to provide that team evaluation, where a speech evaluator focuses on the individual's contribution providing a speech.
Speaking of individual contribution, have you participated in any of the speech competitions before?
I have. Uh, I started competing in 2012. I've not competed every single year since 2012. I competed in District 77. My first year of competition, I went to the semifinal round in Orlando, Florida, and I got third place in the semifinals, which was pretty cool. And the person that was on stage with me, who went to the finals, he and I were from Palm Coast, Florida. Interestingly enough, I went to high school in Palm Coast, and he had moved to Palm Coast as an adult. We had two people from Palm Coast, Florida, on stage at the semifinal round.
There's something in the water in Palm Coast. See, that what was
It must have been the water. Yeah, it must have been the water. I did that a couple times. District 77, I was there, district champion. Here, I competed last year. Yes, it would have been last year. And I got second place in the district level international speech contest. And it's just such a wonderful opportunity to not just to be part of it and deliver a powerful message, but also to get to know a lot of people across our district and just all their wonderful ideas and insights delivered so beautifully and just so passionately. Like, yeah, I'm glad I'm here. This is really cool. Now, everybody had like these clear backgrounds last year because I didn't realize these things were being recorded. So I have this background that's a bit not clear looking, and everybody's looking all sharp. Did I miss something? Maybe I overlooked something. Okay, well, I'll just focus on my speech. My biggest thing was make sure that you deliver it, between 5 and 7 minutes. Don't go over time. As long as I don't go over time, I'll be fine. But it's a lot of fun. I would recommend, if you've never participated in a speech contest, to do it. Not because you want to win and win it all. And sure, I mean, if that's your motivator, wonderful. But just the experience of it, to be part of it, and how much you're going to learn as a speaker during those speech contests from listening and watching and observing others.
I think competition is, or the speech competitions can be quite an intense process. In my second year of Toastmasters, I'm officially in my fourth year, actually 4 years today. I joined the speech competition at the urging of my club. They said, "Hey, you want to do this?" I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going on. I hadn't seen a competition before, but I decided to give it my best, and I ended up winning at the district level.
Nice.
And it was phenomenal. It was a wonderful opportunity to refine those skills And I think the biggest challenge for me was the feedback sometimes because you get so much feedback from different clubs, different people. Everyone has different perspectives. And finding a way to get grounded in what is the delivery that feels the most authentic or feels the most right for me was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah.
So I
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yes, yes. And that is challenging. People really want what's best for you. They want you to be successful. From all this feedback, what can I incorporate? What is this really then? How does it translate to my speech? Where can I make the adjustments? And some are pretty simple ones. Oh, I didn't notice that. That's a good catch. And other ones you're like, I got to think about that. You know, how does this fit into it? I always thought that less is more on a speech. Always less is more when you're giving a speech. I was doing a speech one time and I had a photograph and I had a couple of props at the club level. By the time I got to the district, all the props were gone. Less is more sometimes. Less is more sometimes. And it just frees you up to better engage with an audience. Now, I'm not saying don't use props. Don't get me wrong. What I am saying is less is more. Less words is more. Clearer words versus explaining what you did is more. Descriptive words that really put images in people's minds, that's more. And some people do a really good job of that. I take notes of, oh, that's a really good word. I got to remember that word.
I think I'm going to take that advice of less is more because I'm the opposite. I'm more of thorough. I'm very thorough with, I think, my details or my descriptions sometimes. And I like to be thorough because it helps to explain the story better sometimes. But I agree, less is more. And that's something I'm going to make my goal 2024, 2025. That's going to be my goal for Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm. Less is more. Less is more. And I don't know if you write your speeches. I type up my speeches. I write those, and then I try to find how can I take a sentence and condense it. You know, what is the smallest, the fewest words that I can use that will deliver a message that is clear and concise? Because every second counts, and you're better off pausing and using that second for your audience to reflect on what you said than filling in with words where now you're painting the image, but they can't digest it. They can't
Mm.
internalize it. They can't reflect back and go, oh, that reminds me of this. Or, oh, I like the way that this was said. So sometimes, yeah, the less is more in that way.
That's great advice. Now, I'm curious to know how was the transition of going from the military into civilian life for you? What was that experience like?
I'll tell you, perhaps by telling you what I did. I turned 18. A week later, I went in the military. My entire career, I wore a uniform. My entire adult life, I wore a uniform. And the military is a culture of itself, a different way of looking at the world, acronyms, language. We have our own stuff going on. I knew that I needed to take a break after 30 years. I decided to take a sabbatical because I needed to detox, get rid of the things that were not going to translate in the outside world, outside the fence, if you will. And then there were other things that I needed to make sure that I hung on to, things like the core values, integrity, excellence, and service. And those are the things that are our Air Force core values. And those are things that you're going to maintain for life. But some of the other stuff, you know, a lot of the bureaucracy and the procedural aspects of the routines, I needed to just kind of forget about them for a little bit. I wanted a year off. My wife said, "You're taking 2 months off." We negotiated 6 months. And I traveled and got to see family and went back to the East Coast a couple of times. I volunteered at a local food bank once a week. Just fun little things to do to just, okay, 30 years is a great career. You deserve a break after working for 30 years. Take a break, take some time, recharge, reboot. But it's still somewhat complicated because I don't think you really you can really part with 30 years of a military experience. And I don't want to. And it's not necessarily that, okay, that was in the past. I can just forget about it, put it up on a shelf somehow, let it collect dust. It doesn't work that way. Those are formative years of my life. I met my wife, my kids were born, all these different places we traveled to. It's a lot of great memories and a lot of great mentors and leaders and people who helped me grow as a person. They poured of themselves so I could be at my best. And I helped a lot of people along the way as well. You can't give that up. You can't just put that up on the shelf. But little things like, I'll give you an example. In the military, if you say, hey, Shantia, I really want to talk to you. Can I give you a call tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon so we can continue this conversation about ABC? And you're like, yeah, absolutely. Call me at 2. Yeah, I'll call you at 2, Shantia. Great. And then I call you at 2 o'clock because in the military, that's what we do. Now, if I don't call you at 2 o'clock, I'll call you at 3 o'clock. Shantia, I'm so sorry. I was supposed to call you at 2, but something got in my way. Can we talk now? My bad. So you have the sense of ownership and accountability. People who are non-military don't necessarily speak that kind of language. And it took me a while to understand that. When somebody said, oh, this is really cool. Can I call you tomorrow at 2 o'clock? It means a whole bunch of different things. It can mean I would like to call you at 2 o'clock if I put it on the calendar and I don't have to pick up my kids. Then I'll call you. Or the extreme, a very polite way of saying, I never want to talk to you ever, ever, ever again. I didn't know what that was. So as I've gone now as a solopreneur, as a business owner, helping organizations develop their leaders, conversations like that, I was not prepared to have because I just took, somebody told me they're going to call me at 2 o'clock at face value. And I wish people still did that. So I still have this expectation of, they're going to call me.
That's so funny. It actually takes me to my own experience because I don't know if it was because my parents are in the military or what it was, but I'm also like that too. I'm maybe when it comes to arriving at a party, I might come 5 minutes later. But when it comes to certain appointments, I'm like my expectation is to get right on the dot. What's everyone else up to? What are you guys doing? So that's really interesting to hear that perspective.
Mm-hmm. The flip side of that is the punctuality piece. Military, we're very punctual. We're early is on time. On time is late. I had to really dial back down on that one. I really have to just. It's a 2 o'clock meeting. It's 3 after 2 o'clock. They're not here. So instead of getting upset, instead of going, they're disrespecting me, they're not honoring my time, I might just give them a call and assume that something came up. Hey, Johnny, we have a meeting at 2 o'clock. Yeah, my bad, Manny. This meeting I was in lasted a little bit longer. No problem. I'll be right here waiting for you when you're ready. Just dial in. Thanks. Because 9 times out of 10, there probably was something that got in the way. Instead of, we're supposed to meet at 2. It's 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. Where the heck are you? Click. That's not going to work. So I had to dial that piece down and go, okay, assume best intention here before you go, maybe they don't want to talk about me. Maybe they don't want to meet with me. Maybe they're just jerks, right? And they're just disrespecting me.
It sounds like your personal self-awareness is reflected in everything that you do when it comes to your business that you're creating, your military career, and the reason why you chose Toastmasters, because not everyone has that self-awareness. But I think the common theme of the people who I've met in Toastmasters is a lot of them do have a self-awareness, very wonderfully developed self-awareness, where they saw that they needed to learn how to listen better, learn how to adjust, be flexible to different personalities, be flexible to other people's communication styles, as well as learning how to enhance their own communication. I want to, so we're running out of time here. I want to know, to close this out, so this podcast out, what would you like to let someone who someone who's interested in Toastmasters know about the experience? Why should they join? And then anything else you'd like to add at the end of this podcast here.
I'm glad we were able to have this time together. If you want to improve your leadership, your management skills, the way you communicate, Toastmasters is a wonderful place to do it. It's an environment, as I mentioned before, where we welcome your mistakes and we even applaud them. Everybody that goes into Toastmasters wants to improve something in their professional lives or their personal lives. And we're social creatures. We communicate verbally, orally. Developing this skill is really important if we want to provide meaningful conversations, messages that people can actually make sense of and act upon. Toastmasters can help you do that. It'll give you the confidence. Many of us, maybe growing up, didn't have an opportunity to develop our own self-confidence, and people maybe weren't interested too much in our thoughts and our ideas and our opinions. Toastmasters is, we want to know about you. We want you to show up and tell us about what interests you, what intrigues you, what do you want to work on, what are challenges that you have in a supportive environment where everybody is moving in that direction. Now, that speed and the cadence, that's up to you. And again, Toastmasters allows you to do that. I would just go to toastmasters.org, put in your zip code, find clubs near your area, and go check them out. That's the other really cool thing about Toastmasters is you don't have to sign up first and then 3 months later, oh, I didn't think this was what it was going to be. You can go hang out in a couple of clubs, go test drive them, and then decide, okay, I really like how this group delivers their club meetings, or this is my best time for me to attend the meeting. It works 100% of the time. I can tell you that. And it certainly worked for me, and I wouldn't be in Toastmasters 17 years later, if not for the benefits and value that it brought to me.
The last bit, Manny, could you talk about the podcasts that you've done? And then I'm going to also link them down below for the people who are interested in checking it out. But he's been on a couple of podcasts and he could probably talk more in length about his leadership, his background. If you guys want to know more about his story, I'm going to link it down below.
Thank you. One of the links is to Crestcom.com. Crestcom.com is the organization that I belong to. I'm here in the Pacific Northwest as its representative. Crestcom has a weekly podcast. It's called The Leadership Habit. You can find it where you find your typical podcasts. Episode number 15, you get to listen to me talk about generational connections, generational conversations, and they were featuring different people from different generations. I represented Generation X, born in 1970, right in the middle of Generation X, and how we kind of perceive things and what we bring to the table and how we can harness the strengths and the abilities and the unique talents of all different personalities, how we need to have them all in organizations for us to thrive. I was also part of the Mind Positivo podcast as a guest. That was a really cool way for me to join someone from Australia. Mind Positivo, great podcast. And I think they're like over 30 million people have listened to their podcast over several years. Not to brag about them, that I was on a podcast that's been listened to by 30 million people. Isn't that great? But it was a cool podcast. I got the chance to talk about some of the things that, I've been doing lately. But I'm just glad that I'm here, quite frankly, because I really think that is so important as people to find ways to better get to know each other. There's a lot of different things that we can look at in our society. And certainly one thing we can all agree with is we can all take just a little bit of time to get to know each other a little bit better. Do you know your neighbors a little bit better? Do you know your colleagues at work a little bit better? Do you have to reach out to someone and maybe just extend a little extra touch with them because maybe you sense that I haven't seen them in a while, or they seem a little bit detached, they're not quite themselves? Well, where are you going to get some of that courage and confidence? You can get that in Toastmasters.
I agree 1000%. Thank you, Manny, for joining us for this podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You've been a great guest. I hope everyone has a wonderful day or evening. I'll see you next time. Bye.